so hopefully this is interesting too. First of all, I didn't have many expectations regarding the conference or the progression of teams, but I noticed already on Saturday and even more today that we are like moving forward step by step very nicely, and in the morning the stage was very well set in a way for me too, and then Anu and you also spoke very nicely to start this. And I remember yesterday, was it Saturday, that we talked about this Darwinian things quite a lot, and then about the soul and what's the difference of biology or biological man and the soul, man or woman with a soul. And I think I must confess that I'm certainly now in this speech, I'm talking from a prescriptive standpoint regarding theories, if Anu was talking about sort of more descriptive about what we are, and then maybe basing some solutions and conclusions on that. And so in a way, when you say that we can go beyond the caveman morality, then this is one attempt to go beyond. But it's also the inherent, actually much of the inherent structure of leadership theories that they are, and even today even more so than earlier, that they are very prescriptive in nature, and they also carry a lot of values and also in that respect, of course, they are contextual. So let's look at responsible leadership very briefly. And so I have a very quick sketch of the development of leadership theories, and I do admit that this is sort of Western theories, honestly speaking. So during the 20th century, of course, there are a lot of ancient history, and also in Western world, we in leadership programs we study maybe some Greek gods and goddesses, etc., stories, and Shakespeare, etc., and about war leaders, and those can be also inspiring, and sort of also one can theoretically look at them, but I look at sort of more modern theories. And then why responsible leadership would add something to this kind of development of theories, and then something about the little bit philosophical issues about the senses of responsibility, and then sort of practical, sort of basic definitions of responsible leadership, and then presenting a kind of multi-level conceptualization of responsible leadership, and then I will finish with the managerial implications in Indian context and leave out these ideas for research altogether. That's at least I think at the moment. So we started with the leader, thinking that leaders are either born or they have certain kind of characteristics. So first of all, they are royal and they belong to the royal family, for instance, and nobody else can be a leader other than those people. And then of course after that we realized that maybe not just the royal persons can be leaders, but also other war heroes, etc. And then we studied the characteristics of those. But then we realized that okay, there are not very coherent set of characteristics that we would mimic and make everybody become the same kind of leader. Secondly, we noticed that there's not just an individual leader, but leader has also followers. So let's take into account that there are followers in this picture, and then study that too. And then we have a relationship between these leaders and followers, or leader, sorry, and followers. And there's an influence process from the leader to the followers. Then we have another influence process after they notice that okay, followers also impact. So teachers in this college impact how Rabbi behaves or how Rabbi changes. So that's also can be part of the leadership theory. And then there are finally some interaction, so they together make something out of what we call leadership. Then we also started to notice that they operate in some kind of situational context, and then we can talk, for instance, situational leadership. And then we learned that these both followers and leaders, they learn, and started to sort of focus more on kind of what part learning can play in developing or development of leaders. And then finally, I mean, getting these all together somehow, and then having also a problematic way of understanding the leadership, so that maybe we can say also that the path that leadership theories were taking ran out of steam, as it were. And what we get then nowadays is very prescriptive indeed. So we have all kinds of these more or less recent theories of leadership, and we talk about authentic leadership, being true to yourself, then about charismatic leadership, which is in some parts very important and has in a way gained again more momentum with these spiritual and transformational leadership types, that we leaders would want to transform persons whom they, or the followers, and their identities. And that's certainly something what is claimed to be needed, for instance, to affect changes that we are talking about here. And then spiritual, with the rise of, I would say that with the rise of India influence and Asian influence, the spiritual leadership is very prominent, for instance, in the United States. And there's lots of huge conferences regarding all this, and of course yoga and other these things are part of them. It's also about maybe the individualized world that is promoting that. And then we have some other. And shared leadership has been very popular actually in Nordic countries, and Finland maybe one of the most popular of those. And we like to think that not just one person, but there's a team that leads and things like that, and also companies talking that way. Okay, there is a lot of different titles for these prescriptive theories. Now, why would then we need something called responsible leadership in this context? One is that you have already heard on Saturday and today that there is a kind of new narrative, written about infinite growth is impossible, and we talk about the circular economy, or this closed loop economy. And then at least when you hit a certain point of consumption, level of consumption or income, then more consumption doesn't make us happy. Even though my wife, she has a Raymond Weil watch which I bought to her from Manchester when I was a student in 1990. It cost 1,000 marks then, which is approximately 1,000 euros now, and she has had it for 27 years, and we have been together roughly at the same time. And now it broke down, and she wants the new Raymond Weil watch, and now it does seem very expensive. I don't know how I could afford that 27 years. So so there's some maybe some consumption makes us more happy. But clearly there are governance gaps also, which are then also causing this voluntary regulation between companies to rise, and also then citizen activism also replacing some of the international cooperation agreements between nations. And then we clearly see some scandals happening at times. And then also, more from the leadership theory point of view, we could say that when we deal with the leadership theories, or use leadership theories, it's sometimes so that the good leadership is not so emphasized, rather than successful or performance-oriented leadership, and without taking into values so much into consideration. So effective is different from good. And clearly, which I think is one of the most important, is the second, that it easily becomes too micro-level perspectives, and then the needs of this volatile and uncertain and etc. world would require different kinds of skills. So the value aspects, for instance, would be important already on the lower levels of management. And I know, for instance, US Army Leadership Guide, handbook of leadership, it actually it sets the, in a way, the levels. I mean, the lower level managers, they, and the second middle level managers, they are not supposed to be taught about ethical issues as such. Only when you become a general, etc., you are exposed to, okay, there are some values in the world and there are some politics in place, etc. So it's, for instance, totally different kind of approach than we have in Army in Finland, which I've been also a part of the national service, that we start from the individual soldier and try to instill some ethical behavior in there. So at least to some extent, of course, it may be changing also in America, but I mean, we have in different societies different ways of actually educating these leaders and when they are supposed to think about certain things. And then this last one, I've sort of only during, let's say, 2-3 years more looked into the sustainable development literature and corporate social responsibility. My colleague Markku Nikkanen is very much into it, and we have now a course called Sustainable Growth, started last year together, and we divided it so that, I mean, he's talking about corporate social responsibility and these, in a way, the models that there are, standards, etc. And then I'm talking about this implementation issue, which I'm also in a way now talking that, okay, what kind of leadership it requires in order to make them happen, not just on the level of company annual reports, but also in practice. So if we take a small detour to this responsibility, and I usually like, I mean, not necessarily coming to too much of a conclusion, but that one broadens one's thinking by thinking about this responsibility also in several senses. So you have obligations, you have accountability for promised performance, you have role responsibility in your job, and then you have responsibility being virtuousness, and even then, philosophically speaking, I mean, infinite responsibility for the other, and here we have talked about the unity of the being, so that we all are one, and then whatever we see on the street, I mean, is there this kind of infinite responsibility. But then this was, I think, one of the interesting things to find also within the corporate social responsibility literature, so to speak, was that responsibility for oneself, one's soul. So in a way, within organizations, there is also this kind of responsibility for one's own soul or calling, which is related also in terms of leadership theories to authentic leadership. That not everything has to be complied with. And then this collective responsibility is very much debated also in Nordic countries, or at least Finland also philosophically, and there's quite a strong philosophical tradition of studying that, and maybe it's partly related to this, our interest also in shared leadership in a way that we would like to act together. But also in America there's a lot of, some of my teachers there study this, how corporations could be like collectively responsible, but their, of course, legal environment is totally different than ours. But anyway, there is many senses in which one can think about this responsibility, and then some may be important. These two definitions of responsible leadership, it's basically about this sustaining social and moral relationship between business leaders and different stakeholders. And then you have some sense of justice, recognition, care, and sense of accountability. So this is like a basic. And then this second one, just in a way, is the same, but adds this, which is interesting, I think, that this last line, that leaders should foster the public exchange of opinions, engage in public will formation. So if we think about business leaders, or any leaders, that in a way, how much do they engage in exchange of opinions and actually public information? And maybe some prominent, business leaders or sort of kind of influencer nowadays, they break their way through towards like general discourses and also political discourses. So in a way, the line will be blurring between business and political arena, and also the civic society arena. So in a way, Workbill is saying that, leaders should be more engaged in the society, also informing the opinion, not just taking the rules and playing the games. And then there's behind this is of course basically the classic debate about how much we focus on shareholder value and the stakeholder perspective, which is very strongly behind this responsible leadership theory. So now, if we just think about the responsible leadership, that would be, in a way, then when some leadership theories more or less operate on this micro level of personal interaction within an organization, we would be interested a little more about also the meso level, shaping organizational culture and performance, which comes to some of these issues that we have, Kaisa and others have talked about, but also then on the macro level, how to establish legitimacy and then these trustful relationships and build social capital at large. So at least if you want to, if you want to develop this more responsible leadership outlook, you would then be exposed to these all levels at any level of organization and situation. And in the end, I will finish with this. I was thinking a little bit about India too, and I went to see that, or I noticed that there is this kind of Section 135, the Companies Act 2013, and there is the obligation for companies to actually spend some money on philanthropic work. But when I say that make strategic use, I sort of noticed, and I also heard from some Indians that there is it's maybe only the philanthropic work that is done through, because of that, that you have to 4% or whatever percentage there was that you have to put on these causes, that you could maybe more strategic or creative use of that act could also be used. And then, of course, demand from yourself and others this consistency, and we certainly have here talked about that, and Joachim was talking about this consistency of acts and words. And then some also Indian authors talk about the need for participative management to improve these meso and micro level results. And then I think this is quite interesting, this rely less on idolized role models, instead bring forth regular employees as corporate social responsibility heroes, because then some persons or some cultures are, like also in America, they are very keen on bringing these idealized role models and using them, and then it doesn't come down so much to the grassroots level. And then you might look at, for instance, Finnish Antti Hautamäe's book on sustainable innovation, which would then help you to understand that how these economic goals and also the sustainability goals could be incorporated in your whole strategy. So that's something I could leave you with, that there is some thinking also in India which is relevant to this, and they are also on sort of human resource management side of studies, and also even legal studies, and also the leadership studies, that one can find some resources to develop responsible leadership. Thank you for your attention. Hope you got some sense of this.
Questions for the speakers of the day? May I have your names, please?
Dr. Vinod Kumar for Chemistry Department.
Your question is for?
Your question from Anu ma'am.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Anybody else? Yes, your name, please.
Ashwat Kumar Pani.
The question is for?
Professor Bhavani and Professor Ari.
Having two questions or one question?
Two questions.
Two questions. Okay. Anybody else, please? Yes?
Sir, Mohit Bishnoi. I have a
question for Professor Linda.
Okay. What we can start with you. You are seem to be the youngest.
In the modern era, where science is progressing day by day, why spiritual leadership, perspective from East Asia, specifically India, is gaining momentum? So, what do you think the reason behind this oxymoronic relationship that science is progressing as well as the spiritual leadership is gaining momentum? Thank you.
Okay, that is very, very big and good question. In some ways, when science, let's say science is progressing, we have like double tendencies that we are secularizing or becoming secularized through that. But on the other hand, and we are, because of that, we are like in Finland and in many Western European countries, we are seeing people less committed to their traditional religions and actually leaving those communities, religious communities, and becoming just like, in a way, officially non-religious, as it were, even though they have some beliefs or religious beliefs. And so when they leave the communities, they become a little bit more alone, I mean, individual. And then they realize that they need anyway some higher purposes, and they are currently, I mean, offered many like spiritual paths. And then I think also, let's say, the market system will actually helps this kind of situation to grow, that people are also offered this kind of services, as it were, like also in the leadership area, that you are trying to find your soul through leadership conferences or leadership workshops or trainings, which will then like supposedly heal you. So that's my short answer, that at the same time when we secularize, we become less committed to some communities which have been important, and then we more people seek some guidance, and then this is one source of that.
I think there is some, if you have followed Professor Anu's lecture, he mentioned about, prosperity, bringing in greed. And how does prosperity comes with development in science, technology. So if you were to connect the two, probably will find your answer. Next, I would request Dr. Shashwat to pose his question to Bhavani Dixit.
In this session of responsible thinking for sustainability, we talk of this macro level picture. And in this era of modernization, it is a time to bring a balance in between the people, planet, and profit. But we talk of this triple bottom line concept. On the other hand, we see the transfer of technology is limited and the concentration of power remains at certain hands. So how do you ensure there could be agriculture sustainability in India? To Professor Bhavani.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me speak about Indian situation. We have variations in our climate in almost all the states. So according to climate variations, we have to see our crop pattern, production orientations. Let me say, we have so much of lands unutilized all over the country. We don't tap those resources, number one. Second, our market situations are quite divergent everywhere. Because of which, even if government has marketing yards, cooperative societies for marketing agricultural products in various states. Consumer gets at a higher price, and producers, they don't get any. In the whole process, let us say this mother dairy, suffer. Even if the government is coordinating for fixing rates, fixing prices, sometimes what happens, people go for cheaper varieties and fresh foods. Let me say in my place, I belong to Sabarpur. Recently, this NDTV opened 6 outlets in my place. Many people on the first day they started complaining that we don't get fresh food, fresh vegetables. They don't go by price. You see the psychology of a consumer. On the first day of the inauguration, how will you expect fresh vegetables at your doorstep? Second, when at a very cheap price, things are available at on the footpath, why anybody will go to a mother dairy or Safalpur? So we should have, as a consumer, we should have patience, and we should wait for some time, so that at a competitive price, after some time it will settle down. So things are like this, and because of distance, because of freight charges, because of tax system, things are quite divergent. We cannot expect rates to be at the same level everywhere. See our crop pattern also, like paddy, wheats. Suppose we go for changing for food security issues, we keep on our traditional pattern. Then at the same time, other places we are having export problems, like let us say flowers, floriculture, horticulture, agricultural products and fruits and other things. We can produce more. But suppose we think of diverting our attention from our traditional pattern of crops, then also we will have more problems. So according to situations, and it depends on different variables, so that we have some sustainable efforts. So it is very difficult to say from now onwards how we can make a system for ourselves. It will take some time. It is a huge country, particularly India. It is very difficult. You see, think of a farmer, suddenly rain comes, it floods, because of flood, everything is destroyed. Then how are you going to replace his products? And how the consumers will be getting more products from the agricultural? So that kind of situation will keep on.
Dr. Vinod Kumar.
You told about the fingers. There is a difference between fingers of men and women. This finger is longer in women. This finger is longer in men. Is there any emotional difference between the men and women? Ladies are more emotional than men. Can correlate with the finger?
Yeah. And when the fetus is inside the mother's womb, at the same time when the finger grows, the testosterone level kind of settles. So the finger therefore tells about, is correlated with the testosterone level. And then there is studied many different studies, how well the finger then correlates with these behavioral tendencies. And for example, business students that have long this finger will choose financing as a major. So this really strange studies about the finger is called 3D, 2D studies, and they are really interesting.
But the ladies are more emotional than men.
I think you have asked your question.
Yeah.
All the acceptors are there. All the acceptors
I think
are there.
ladies are more complicated than men.
Okay. Thank you on that note. Bhavani, you have a question for person.
Creating rural leaders or creating this agri-entrepreneurs or micro-entrepreneurs or community mobilizers in the developing countries like India so they could able to bridge the gap of programs and policies. Will that be a sustainable stand or a responsible stand for the country like India?
Oh yes, sure. I mean, I think, if government spends money on education or training, so I think if we think about rural areas and the leaders or important key figures in those communities, they should also get leadership training, and actually you should invest in that kind of an education. And I actually happened to, a little bit by accident, to look just 2 weeks ago in Finland at how they started in 2000, was it 30? No, I mean not long ago, 3 years, 4 years ago, a leadership program for like forestry ecosystem, including people from the industry, but also forest owners, and also like one of my colleagues from our university, from the forestry department, and different kind of actors in that ecosystem. So that kind of leadership training would be like my suggestion for a policy instrument in a way on a grassroots, because oftentimes, like, we have realized, for instance, that women leaders, have been started to become educated as and special programs for them during the past 20 years or so. And then there are there must be many groups who are underrepresented, for instance, in leadership programs. So I think that would be a good way forward. And that would be good.